What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today, we've got the Luffy leader. You know, yesterday I showed you images of the free leaders from Starter Deck 13, and we talked about what that means in terms of color combinations, etc. But I couldn't tell you what they did because the text was blurred out. It was a whole thing, I had a whole video on it yesterday. Well, the bad news is, I still don't have images of Law or Sabo. A little bit sad. The good news is, I do have an image of the Luffy, I have translated the image of the Luffy, and we know exactly what the Luffy does. The bad news is, it brings up one of the most awkward ruling queries, maybe the most awkward ruling query that we have seen since the inception of this game. There is a huge ruling issue that 100% changes basically everything we feel about the card. So look, we're going to talk about what the card does. I'm going to tell you essentially both sides of the rule. I'm going to go through the arguments. I'm going to tell you all the ifs, buts, and maybes. We're going to have a good old chat about it. And if you watch this video, hopefully you will. You've started. You might as well finish at this point. Hopefully you're going to walk away going, okay, that makes perfect sense. I get this. All right? However, we do also need to just keep in mind here, it is very important, we are missing that ruling, and it's not actually going to be an issue when we get to play the card. There is going to be an FAQ for Starter Deck 13, because there always is an FAQ for every new deck, and there is no chance they don't put this in the FAQ for the new deck, so it is going to work out, it is going to be okay. For now, let's just have a gander. So as I told you yesterday, what we've got is a black and yellow Luffy, 5,000 power, 4 life, all very standard, and of course, we are fighting with Charlotte Linlin, the other yellow and black leader. As a side note, you're also Supernova and Straw Hat Pirates, so you're probably not just swapping these two leaders out for each other, you are two entirely different decks. And the skill is very confusing. It says, essentially, there is a new rule that your face-up life cards will be sent to the bottom of your deck instead of to your hand. Any face-down life cards this doesn't affect, but any face-up life cards, instead of going to your hand, will instead go to the bottom of your deck. It's kind of like half banish. They don't go to your trash, but they go to your deck rather than going to your hand, which means you don't get the hand advantage, which is a little bit sad. We've then got Don X2, activate main, once per turn. Very importantly, this is an activate main, not a when attacking or anything like that. You may trash one card from your hand, and if you have 0 life, you may add 2 cost 5 characters from your hand or your trash to your life face up. Couple very important things to note. Firstly, it says 5 cost. It does not say 5 cost or lower or 5 cost or higher. I did translate this myself, incidentally. I have checked the translation with a lovely Orange Samurai D, who's checked with Hiroshishu. I'm probably pronouncing that terribly and I apologise. But I did translate this myself, and it most definitely is exactly 5 cost. It literally says cost 5 character. Well, up to 2. Cost 5 characters. It is definitely exactly cost 5. But you do have all of black and yellow to choose from, so that's quite nice. But they get added to your life face up. And look, there's a couple of things before we get to the ruling. First of all, every turn, if your life is at 0, you can put 2 characters down into your life. That is absurd. That is absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Like, we've got leaders that can recover, but not like this. This is crazy. I mean, you know, we could look at something like Charlotte Linlin, for instance, who takes a life, but if you've got 2 or less remaining, and then if you've got 2 or less remaining, you get to get a life back, which is quite nice, but that's not just adding 2 life. That would be ridiculous. That's a very, very different thing. We've got the other Charlotte Linlin from OPO3 as a nice example, who's got a rather lovely skill that lets you trash a card from your hand, Don X2, when attacking, pay 2, and if you've got 1 or less life, you can add a card from the top of your deck to the top of your life. We've got the Enel coming in OP05, whereby when you go down to 0 life remaining, you can trash a card from your hand. This is during your opponent's turn, of course, and then add a card from the top of your deck to the top of your life. We've got leaders that recover, okay? What we don't have is a leader that can basically choose 2 cards to go in your life. This is absurd and brilliant. But then we get to the question of, okay, do you get to activate trigger? Because obviously what you're doing here is you are choosing the characters that go on top of your life face up. So if triggers activate, this becomes a way better card. Because of course you get to just, put characters with good trigger on and go. If trigger doesn't activate, well, you're still recovering 2 life. Let's not get too precious about this. It's still a very good card. Now, the argument essentially goes like this. If we look at the rules are quite clear. I mean, we can literally look at the basic rule book where it says trigger effect, an effect that can be activated when the leader takes damage and a card is added to the hand from the life area. And there's similar wording all over the rule book. So here's a rule. If a card with trigger is added to the player's hand from their life area, the player can choose to activate that trigger. Here's another one. If the opponent has 1 or more life at the point when it is determined that damage will be dealt, the opponent adds the card at the top of their life cast to their hand. At this time, if a card with trigger is added to the opponent's hand from their life area, the opponent may choose to reveal the card and activate its trigger instead of adding it to their hand. So the rulebook is very clear here. Trigger activates instead of going to your hand. Okay? And it specifically mentions in the rulebook multiple times going to your hand. I've chatted with 2 different judges who have both head judged large One Piece events this morning, and both of them have given me the same explanation, which is the rulebook specifically says trigger is instead of going to hand. These cards do not go to hand because, remember, with Luffy, you add them face up, and face up life cards go to your deck, not your hand. Therefore, trigger does not activate. 2 judges, same answer. And actually, before I asked the judges, I went to the rulebook, which is always the first thing you should do before asking a judge. And yeah, obviously not in the middle of a tournament, but I'm saying like situations like this where I'm making a video, I should be looking at the rulebook before I go and bother judges about it. And all 3 times I got the same answer. So it seems like trigger probably won't activate. There is a counter-argument here. And the counter-argument is the card might be designed in this way. It might be designed to allow you to use trigger. I'm not sure. Now, clearly there are a lot of downsides to this card. It's Don X2. That's a downside. Your life must be exactly 0 cards. That's a downside. You may trash 1 card from your hand, i.e. you've got to trash a card from your hand to do this. That's a downside. It is only 5 cost characters that can be put back into your life. That's a downside. There are many, many downsides here. Alright? So the argument essentially is that they've put so many downsides onto the card because you can get 2 life back and activate trigger as well. For what it's worth, and I've said this clearly, but let me say it again one more time, the prevailing wisdom is that trigger does not activate. However, I want to go back to what I said at the beginning of the video. We do not have an official ruling on this. It will be in the FAQ, and I usually get to the FAQs, and I usually make a video on them, but I think it's fair to say for starter deck 13, might get to the FAQ a little bit faster than I usually do. Might jump on that like the second it's posted and get that one online to explain it to you lovely ladies and gentlemen. Even if it doesn't activate, and again, the prevailing wisdom is that it doesn't activate, but that is not an official ruling. We do not have an official ruling. It may well be that the game rules interpret this card different to other cards. Although I did raise that with one of the judges who told me very, very clearly, and they're right about this, Bandai do tend to be pretty comprehensive in their rules. If this changed the rules, i.e. if the rules read this card differently to other cards, it would probably say it on the card, like it says that face-up life cards go to the bottom of your deck. And again, it is only face-up that go to the bottom of your deck. Even if Trigger doesn't activate, this is still a phenomenal card. This is a ridiculous card. I mean, yellow and black's a fun combination, don't get me wrong, but the fact here that you can essentially continually get 2 life back when you go to 0, like go down to 0, then use your blockers and countering, and then it comes back to your turn and you use this skill to go back up to 2. Incidentally, the reason why the cards go back to the bottom of your deck is because if the cards went back to your hand like normal, well, you would always have 5 cost characters available to put back into your life, which, to be fair, is a very strong argument for Trigger not activating, because you could just play cards with Trigger, and then they could play for free, and then round and round we go. Although it wouldn't be quite so easy, because remember, you play cards onto your life from your trash or your hand, and obviously if you're playing cards with Trigger, they would generally be played onto the board. So even if Trigger does activate, it wouldn't allow you to loop it so much, because what you would really want to do is get those cards back into your hand and then play them down and round we go. They go to the bottom of the deck. You can't do that. If Trigger activates, this is a ridiculous card and may well be the best leader we've seen so far. If Trigger doesn't activate, and I do have to stress once again, the prevailing theory is that Trigger does not activate, it's still a very good leader, and the idea that you can essentially play a deck full of 5 cost characters, and you've got 2 colours to choose from, remember, and then essentially just make sure that you've got all your counter and all your blockers ready, so you go down to 0 life, make sure you don't lose the game, and then on your next turn, you get 2 life back. And you just do that over and over again. You are gonna hear people telling you what the ruling is. And all I can tell you is what I've told you already. Let's wait for the official ruling. There will be an FAQ when Starter Deck 13 is released. This will be in that FAQ. It has to be. It's too important. Good. Good. For now, can we all agree this is still a phenomenal leader, and this is like the first card we've seen from Starter Deck 13. I've told you this is going to be even better than Starter Deck 10, and it does seem like that is holding true. But I want to know what you think, so let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk One Piece and a bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, and all kinds of fun things. But by far, the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name is Ross, and you've been watching Wasi Plays.